we had a great marriage. It was amazing, and I buried her on our 17th wedding anniversary.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for jumping on another episode of Daddy Issues. Today we got on Matt, and he has quite the story to share with us today. So I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his story.
Hi, my name is Matt Cleary, and I am going to be 47 years old, and I am a widower. Was happily married for 17 years, and my wife unfortunately came down with metastatic breast cancer. She was diagnosed in 2016. It was already pretty advanced, and she fought hard for 4 years, and unfortunately, um, she had a new site come up on her brain in 2020, right in the middle of COVID, and we were in the process of relocating to Virginia. So she had surgery, and then one morning she was recovering for a few weeks, and one morning woke up and she went into cardiac arrest, and it was it for us, unfortunately. So
How hard was it during COVID? Like, was it more difficult to get into the hospitals and do what you needed to do?
yeah, like it was pretty wild when she went in for her procedure to have the her met site removed. I didn't like dropped her off like I was dropping her off for camp. It was crazy. And then they were like, all right, you can pick her up on a couple days. I was like, she's having brain surgery. So it was pretty trippy.
Yeah, that's tough too because she's there by herself. So
Yeah, exactly, exactly. We we health wise in our family, we had not had the easiest road over the years. I know I shared with you that unfortunately in 2011, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, came home to hospice almost immediately, and it was right after her 60th birthday in February, and she died unfortunately April 19th of that year. And then 3 months after that, we lost my sister, my 30-year-old sister. She was born with congenital heart disease, and had several open heart surgeries throughout her life. And she was just driving to work one day, and went into cardiac arrest. So it was tough, and that was right in the middle. We were I failed to mention. I think I failed to mention we have three kids of our own. My daughters are 20, 17, and 12. So my wife was actually pregnant with our youngest during that whole time period. So it was tough. Through that last pregnancy, my wife was diagnosed with a heart condition. She had she had aortic stenosis and a bicuspid aortic valve, which normally doesn't present till much later in life, but through the stress of pregnancy and everything, they found it, and she wound up on bed rest she went into the hospital on my birthday. It was June 23rd, 2011, and I came home from work, and she was like, "Your presents are in the kitchen with your card and your cake. You have to take me to the hospital. They're admitting me." And I was like, "Oh, great."
jeez.
So she spent the last like 47, 48 days of her pregnancy on bed rest in the hospital, through all of everything that was going on. And then in 2013, she wound up having open heart surgery to replace that valve. So it's just one thing after another, medically.
Yeah, and to you too, it's like, how do you handle that? Because obviously you weren't a single dad at that point, but at the same time, kind of, because
Yeah,
you have to take care of the girls while she's taking care of herself. Trying to get help. So
yeah, absolutely. And thankfully, I have like a village around me that it really like they have time and again jumped in and helped me out. And kind of jumped in the breach when things were really, really bad. But there's a lot of, figuring out single fatherhood. I mean, through Shannon's illness, 4 years of chemo every 21 days. Um, Chemo really takes its toll on the person, aside from worrying about, is it going to get worse, or, am I going to die? Things like that. I mean, just the physical toll that it takes, on top of everything else. There were days that she couldn't get out of bed. And, at the time I coached three softball teams. I was, on the board for our pigtail league. And, I ran around, from my girls are heavily involved in drama and music and softball, obviously. And I was a taxi driver.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm
so
a taxi driver now, but I can only imagine.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And girls as well. Like I have two girls, and it's so much different than boys, especially being that single father. It's like it's just different, you know. I had a brother growing up, so I knew, we were rough, we roughhouse, and with
Yeah,
girls, it's just a lot different. And it was funny in the message you sent me with like going through the stages of womanhood.
yeah.
I'm there right now with my oldest, but my youngest isn't there yet. But it's different, man. It's different.
It is. And, like, thankfully, I've always, I always took the approach to parenting where I was like, I want my kids to come to me, like, knowing what I did when I was a kid, over the years, and the things that I didn't tell my parents and things like that. I wanted to make sure that my kids could come to me with anything. And I'm like, if it's boys, if it's periods, if it's, whatever, just, come to me. It's going to probably be uncomfortable for both of us. We're probably both going to blush, but, we got to talk about it, and we've got to have, because if you can't talk to me about those things when really important stuff, that comes up about your safety, or, um, how are you going to come to me with things like that? So,
Now, how was it? I know your oldest, I think you said was 20, 17, and then 12.
yes, yeah, 2017 and 12.
Yeah. So how did they? I mean, how did they take it when your wife was going through all that stuff?
So it was hard. It was scary. We tried to be very open with them, and make sure that they understood that, there was a plan in place. Mom had the best doctors, and, everything was going to be taken care of. And every now and again, like when it came time for mastectomy time, when it came time for scans and things like that, you could feel the tension in the house. Like everybody was just kind of quiet and off a little bit, because they were worried, and we all were. The scan time every 6 months it's different, like, it just changes the whole dynamic in the family.
Yeah, everyone's kind of nervous. Like, what could the
Yeah,
results be? Yeah.
yeah, and like, for a while, after several years, you start to get a little cocky about it. And I remember I was it was like the morning of, I'm sitting in the waiting room, and I'm like, yeah, so it's just another scan day, like, no problem. And, it bit me in the ass that time. I was like, if I could take any of my posts from social media down, I wish I could take that one down. But, but like I told you in my message to you, like, we did our normal thing. We went for the scan. We had our little lunch date, hung out at home. But by the time we got back in the driveway, the radiologist was calling, was like, listen, I've got bad news. And that kind of just took the wind out of our sails.
Yeah. Now, how did you handle that? Like with three kids, it's some people would just fall and crumble. It seems like you're still somewhat pretty positive. Is it because you were like you're so busy with your kids and you didn't have time to be sad or?
So it's interesting that you asked that question. I drank a lot. I was an alcoholic. I come from a very loving, very supportive family, and, we always just got through things. And I didn't realize until after Shannon had passed away, that my way of getting through those hard times. And like, hey, we're not going to fall apart now. We're not going to, cry and think the worst right now. We're going to get through it, and then afterwards, is when we can fall apart and have all of our big feelings. So I always suppress my feelings, but in doing so, I drank so much. I was already like a party boy drinker, and I was a good time Charlie. Every place I went, everybody loved to see Matt Cleary. But it became something that was just how I coped. And instead of just getting home from work and having a couple beers with dinner, it was like, I'm going to go to lunch right now at 11 o'clock because there's a bar open. And
Yeah.
so it got really bad, to the point where, when I came home, I had said that we were relocating to Virginia. I was driving back and forth and leaving my kids because we didn't have a place to live there yet. I made it through my wife died in September. Shannon died in September. I made it all the way through, till March, and I finally just gave up, and I was like, I'm going to find a job closer to home. Doesn't make sense to move my kids out of their comfort zone, away from everybody that's helpful and loves them. They need that support system. It doesn't make sense to move at this point. And so I remember sitting at my kitchen table. I had taken my kids to school. I was on LinkedIn like every morning. That was my thing. I was on LinkedIn, and then I noticed, like, the first couple of days I was drinking coffee and trying to apply for jobs and things like that. By the end of that week, I was like 4 beers into the day after I just dropped my kids off from school, and I'm on LinkedIn like, yeah, I got to find a job. And then it hit me, and I was like, what are you going to do, Matt? What are you going to do if they call you and say, we love your resume. Can you come in today at 11 o'clock for an interview? Like, you're hammered. There's no way. No way you're going to be able to do that. And I was like, I've got a serious problem. Like, I can't stop by myself. So I went to rehab.
Yeah, the good for you, man. 'Cause my brother was an alcoholic and lost the fight, so I never understood why people couldn't just stop. Like, what is it about drinking where people just, you're drinking in the afternoon and it's just like, how does it make you feel? Like, why do you do it? Like, how does it help
Yeah,
you? I don't know. It's a hard thing to do. Yeah.
it does. It helps you until it doesn't. And in the end, I was really bad. I was drinking vodka sodas and at 5:30 in the morning, for taking my morning meds. I was waking up in the middle of the night having panic attacks, because I thought it was just my anxiety, but I was going through alcohol withdrawal.
Oh, okay.
My body was, so like I'm drinking cocktails and eating Xanax, all, trying to manage my anxiety that I basically just created for myself. So, I've been sober. It'll be 4 years now, and
Good for you, man.
coming up in May.
Good for you.
So thank you.
Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. So, I mean, that's been, probably the most positive thing to come out of, this whole tragedy of losing my wife. I mean, we had a great marriage. It was amazing. And I buried her on our 17th wedding anniversary. And it's hard. It's really hard, but I was always a guy, like I said before, who was all about, keeping your feelings down and not talking to anybody about it. Everything's fine. We're fine. Kind of raised my kids that way too. I was like, it's always like a stiff upper lip. But thankfully, I finally, through getting sober, I realized that I needed therapy, and, definitely my kids needed therapy, and they've been doing really, really well. They're thriving. I mean, they miss their mom, obviously, but
It's crazy how much that helps you just by talking. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast,
yeah,
because it helped me so much, because I was so frustrated with like court and how everything was going on. But just having a support
yeah,
system and to be able to talk and share with other people, it really does help so much with anything.
it does. Yeah, yeah, it really does. Having that close group of friends, having a professional that you can talk to, it really, really helps.
Yeah. Now, so are your kids are now kind of doing much better? They're on a good path.
My oldest is a sophomore. She's finishing up her sophomore year at your university, and she's doing great. She's the president of her a cappella group. She just wrapped a chorus line last month at school. She was in her first college production. She's
That's
doing
awesome.
amazing things. Yeah, and my middle daughter Nora, she's graduating in June. Trying to figure out where she's going to school next year. So she's having trouble deciding, but doing exciting things like getting ready for prom and stuff like that. We were just before I got on talking about prom dresses and the weekend after and things like that. So and Quinn, my youngest, is heavily involved in Girl Scouts and drama, um, and just loving life. She loves to cook. We cook together all the time. Um, so yeah.
If you could tell other dads, something positive, what would you say to other dads out there that might be going through something similar, or even like with the alcoholism?
Like we get in this mindset where I feel like everything we do is for our kids. And I know after Shannon died, people were like, you need to take time for yourself. You need to figure out, you know, get some you time and break away from the kids a little bit, go out. And like when I initially heard that, I was in the throes of alcoholism, and I was like, that means I need to go out and party. I'll go out and party my balls off
Yeah,
and
yeah,
regret it the next day. And but that's not what that means. I've found through the last almost 4 years, it's little things. It's important that because I'm actually in this interesting position now, and it's something that I talk to my therapist a lot about. My kids are moving out, right? So like, my youngest Quint, she's in seventh grade, but a couple of years she's going to be graduating high school too. So who am I? Who is Matt Cleary? I've always identified myself as, I'm Quinn's dad, I'm Nora's dad, I'm Kayla's dad, but I'm a single father now, and my kids are growing up. They're not going to need me anymore. So like, you have to do things for you to discover who you are so that you can be the best version of yourself for your kids. And if you think you have a problem drinking or with drugs or whatever, then definitely address that. But you've got to do it for you, not for your kids, not for your wife or girlfriend or anybody else.
yeah. I mean, obviously, I guess that's the only way you're going to get through it. If you have to do it for yourself.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. It just goes by so fast. Do your girls like? Do you kind of have a stronger bond after all of this happened with them?
I think so. Yeah, I'd like to think so. They might tell you differently, but I'd like to think that we do. Because we were we were always a very close family, and I made sure that I tried to spend time with them individually and stuff like that. But now that it's just the four of us, I do feel like we've excuse me, grown a lot
Yeah.
closer.
And like financially, did all of that stuff hit you at all, or did it go through insurance and you guys weren't too worried about that?
So a lot of it did go through insurance, but I mean, I think what hit me worse, I mean, just completely, between us and all of your podcast viewers, I have nothing now. Like between alcoholism and cancer, I mean, I lost my house. Um, we've been renting a place, outside of town for probably 2 years now, but like I'm rebuilding, from the ground up. Um, and it took its toll, but I mean, I try not to dwell on that too much, try not to focus on that, and try and just say, okay, what happened happened. This is where you are right now. Build a strong foundation from here, and that's been my focus for the last four
Yeah, most
years.
people get stuck. The loss that you took,
Yeah,
and then the alcoholism, and you have three kids you have to raise, and you have no money. It's like most people get stuck in that hole, and they just keep going. They just keep digging themselves deeper. But like to realize, like,
Yeah.
I gotta do that. It is what it is. I gotta rebuild and get myself out of it. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I've got people relying on me, you know. I mean, I've got college tuition payments now, and I'm about to have two
Yeah.
sets, come September. So I got to keep going no matter what. And yeah, even on days I don't feel like it, and there are plenty of days I don't feel like it. I mean, if you follow me on social media, you'll see it's like a roller coaster of emotions. You know, some days I'm all in my feelings, and it sucks, and it's hard being in your feelings when you don't have alcohol or Xanax or anything like that to offset it. But you learn how to deal with it.
But I
It's
would
not
think
easy.
too, like posting that stuff on Facebook. I mean, you must have, friends and family that comment and hit you up and bring you up from if you're posting something, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like negative, and they're bringing you out of it. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I have an amazing support system. And my friends, my family. My brother lives three miles down the road. My dad is still doing great. I would say great for his age, but he would beat me up. So I'll just say he's doing great. My stepmom is amazing. It's it's nice. And so when I do have those days, but I have those days they pick me up, but I post that stuff not for people to pick me up, but just for if there's one person that I'm friends with that sees that and is going through something similar, or and says, all right, if he can do it, I can do it, or maybe he can help me. Like I'm always willing to. I've talked to people about addiction all the time. I talk to people about single parenting all the time because if I can help one person per day, then that's
Yeah, I have a friend here. She is, I think, like 35 years sober or something crazy. Maybe 20. I think she had a 25-year anniversary. But but if you just met her I mean, she talks about it all the time, but you would think that she just got sober yesterday or 2 days ago. But it's like
yeah,
she talks about it
yeah,
so passionately, and like every day is still a struggle. And she's been going 25 years. It's just
it
like,
is.
whoa, you know? Yeah.
It really is. Like I was at a barbecue yesterday, and like everybody was having cocktails and stuff like that, and you know, I have friends in recovery who are people that will just
Hmm.
they won't go out, they won't
Like
put
that
themselves
temptation.
in that situation, and
Yeah.
exactly, and I respect that. I mean, everybody's recovery journey is different, and I totally respect that. But that's not how I want to live my life. I don't want to not go to a bar because there's a bunch of booze behind the counter. Like they've got good wings. I want to go there. Like they've got good. So I choose to live my life differently, and I just try every day. I try and do one thing, to forward my recovery, instead of going to meetings and
Yeah.
staying out of places like that.
Now, did your kids know or understand when you were going through the alcoholism and all of that?
Yeah, I think so. I think they were still like a little on the, I don't want to say young side because they were older, but more like on the naive side because they grew up with alcohol in the house. Shannon and I used to, we'd have beers and glass of wine, especially after everybody was in bed and stuff like that. We had our mom and daddy time. Um, and so they grew up around it, not thinking that anything, it was a big deal, I think. So for me to, but there was also plenty of times where I woke up on the floor in the family room with a blanket over me. So somebody tried to wake me up and was
Oh, wow. It
unsuccessful
was
and,
unsuccessful.
and covered me up. Yeah, yeah. So, I think maybe they had an inkling that maybe I had a
Yeah.
problem, but it was definitely the right move.
Yeah. Getting sober. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I definitely really, really appreciate that. You have a hell of a story, and I am so glad that you are on the up. You're climbing yourself out and getting better.
Thank
So
you. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's a daily struggle, and some days you make it, miles and miles. You just have success after success, and some days you get knocked down a few pegs, and that's just the way it is. Some days just getting out of bed to go to the bathroom is awesome. The fact that you move that little bit, but as long as I'm moving forward every
Exactly.
day,
Exactly.
and I think that's important, whether you're talking about addiction, whether you're talking about my situation, being a widower, or whether you're talking to guys who are dealing with, horrible ex-wives,
Yeah.
and trying to raise kids, it's hard. So, and I think it's important that guys, as guys, we check in on each other.
Yeah. I mean, because we were raised to really, keep your emotions inside,
Yeah,
bottled up, be a man. And you know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah,
but
exactly.
talking about it and staying close and joining those Facebook groups and all of that stuff is so, so helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
we will talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks so much for having me.
You can't hold me down.